Hi everyone, welcome to the Whole Food, Whole You resource group. I hope you can join me today. Today we are going to talk about how you can maximize gut health. So just a reminder, this is definitely taking a pretty broad brush approach because like I mentioned in the last video, I really could go on for hours about one aspect of it, which is what questions are for. So let me know if you have any more specific questions after I tell you a little bit about more of the general guidelines today. So again, I have some of my notes on the side of the screen, so I'm going to refer back to those. Okay, so the way that I work as a health coach is to start with the basics, to pull it back. Again, we're looking at the root cause, and a good process for finding the root cause is to go back to the basics. Think about things like what your baseline is with food and sleep and stress. That's not only a way to figure out things more safely instead of just throwing supplements at something that you might not need or actually might make something worse. It's also more cost effective because you're not just jumping into expensive labs and supplements that you might not need. So what I like to do and what I encourage you to do is start with those basics, which we're going to talk about. And then if you're still having issues, that's when you can dig a little deeper. Work with a practitioner, work with a health coach, or both to figure out the things that are left over. So again, starting with the basics, deal with what's left over. Don't just jump to supplements. Okay, so that leads me to our first action step, which is remove. This might sound like some repetition because I do bring this up all the time. It's because, again, it's important and it affects so much of what you may be dealing with, whether it's gut issues, hormonal issues, thyroid issues. Remove the inflammatory foods. So obviously that's the super processed stuff, the really refined oils and sugary foods and drinks. Those are kind of the obvious ones that you should at least be removing. If nothing else, get rid of cooking oils like canola oil. Those are inflammatory oils. Remove gluten-containing foods that can be that are gut irritants and can contribute to leaky gut. Remove foods like legumes that can also be like beans. That can contribute to leaky gut. So both of those are gut irritants. And if you're starting at square one, you've never made food changes like this before, I would suggest trying a program like the Whole30 that'll get you a jump start and that also has a lot of support built into that community. They have multiple online communities, so that would be a good place to start. There's also a book. So for the sake of improving gut health, I would then take it a step further. I'd also go ahead and, at least for now, remove dairy and alcohol. Again, at least for now. Alcohol and dairy products both contribute to leaky gut. Alcohol very directly opens up those tight junctions between cells in your gut lining. And people with dairy, people often have dairy sensitivities, and if you're sensitive to gluten and react to gluten proteins, often you will also react to dairy because dairy proteins are gluten cross-reactive or cross-reactors, which means that your body basically reads those proteins as, reads the dairy proteins as gluten. So that's something to consider. I know that's a lot to take out at once, so again, just start maybe with switching out your cooking oils. Instead of cooking with inflammatory canola oil and soybean oil, cook with coconut oil and avocado oil. Even a simple change like that can be really helpful for decreasing inflammation and improving gut health in the long run. Okay, so to take that another step further, if there are certain foods that you're really not sure about, but you just kind of have this inkling that they may be causing you issues, common ones might be like nuts or eggs. it's a good idea to consider eliminating those foods for a certain period of time, tracking your symptoms, and then adding them back in and tracking your symptoms again. It's all a big science experiment, but it can really pay off if it makes you feel better. The second thing you remove, stress. And I know this gets an eye roll because, I'm not telling you to magically just quit all of your commitments and create a stress-free existence for yourself. That's not going to happen. However, if you can take a good look at your week and really analyze, try to figure out what points of stress are coming up. So, are you sleeping enough? We've talked about this one multiple times, that not sleeping enough can be an incredible source of stress on the body. Are you in fight or flight mode when you're eating? Are you trying to eat on the go? Are you stuffing in food in 5 minutes? Are you shoveling in food without chewing well? So I really encourage you to be present as you're eating your food. Are you over-exercising? Again, that's a big stress on the body. It can absolutely lead to a leaky gut. Remember, when your body is in a more stressful state, your body will not be able to focus its efforts on digestion. That's just anatomy and physiology 101. Because as we've discussed before, when you're stressed out, your body wants to put all its efforts towards things like your muscles and your heart, getting you out of that situation, preparing you to run. You're not going to need to digest in that situation. You're not going to need to produce sex hormones in that situation. So those are all things to think about if you're living this chronically stressed out life. Okay, so those are the remove things. Step 2 is add. So what does that mean? Add real nourishing food. Especially foods like bone broth, which we've talked about and which I've done a video of and we have instructions for in this group. And if you have any other questions about it, I can absolutely help you with making it. It's very, very easy. Contains amino acids like proline and glycine, contains collagen. All of those things really help with the repair of the gut. Fermented foods like sauerkraut, kombucha, kimchi, that repopulate your gut with good bacteria. Eating fruits and vegetables, that you do have to be careful with those. I'm not saying eating fruits and vegetables are a bad thing, but a lot of people, when they jump into more of a real food lifestyle, it can be a bit of a shock, and you can also overeat those foods, especially the non-starchy veggies like lettuce and green leafy greens and stuff like that, which may seem like a very foreign concept to you if you're eating a standard American diet right now, but it happens. People end up with some digestive issues. So it's a good idea to make sure you're eating more easily digested veggies, like starchy veggies, like sweet potatoes. So just keep that in mind. Eat meat and fish, especially wild caught and grass-fed if you can, and then eat those healthy fats that I talked about, like coconut oil and avocado oil, other animal oils, like actually when you make bone broth, you can scrape off the tallow that rises to the surface, and it tastes awesome. It tastes like kind of a bacon fat. So those are all great foods to add for a more nourishing way of eating. And I know that's a lot, especially if you're starting from the beginning. So start with one simple but satisfying change. And I'll post some ideas in the Facebook group soon, but one would be just trying bone broth. Because again, that is a really, really easy thing. I probably wouldn't make it if it wasn't easy, but it takes about 5 minutes of my time. So I do make it. And again, we have the tutorial for that in the group. You could go to bed 15 minutes earlier this week. Another way to just make a tiny, satisfying change. So here's where things get a little trickier. If you make changes, Sarah says, how to make kombucha. Yeah, I have not, I haven't filmed a live video on how to make kombucha since I botched the last one, but I did make a video on my phone that I just have to edit, and then I'll post to this group sometime soon. So I'll try to do that this week, because that's also extremely easy. Kombucha is so easy, and I've actually gotten to the point where I crave it because it's kind of this, it's really this cold, refreshing, slightly fruity drink. So it's really great, and cheap once you know how to do it. Okay, so removing and adding those things, those are, that's kind of your baseline. That's where we're starting. Where it gets trickier is if you do those things and then you're like, okay, well, I'm still having loose bowel movements, or I'm still constipated, or I still have GI pain, or whatever. So if you still feel like something's not right, test, don't guess. Work with someone to get a GI panel done or test for bacterial overgrowth. Don't just order whatever probiotic or supplement you see on Amazon that has good reviews. I know that's tempting because I've done it. However, you will end up wasting money. You might accidentally pinpoint it and be able to, you know, fix a problem, but I think often, more than often, you're just going to end up feeling like, oh man, I'm just one of those people who takes these supplements, it just doesn't work for me. And that's because there's probably a bigger underlying issue. So you may have an overgrowth of bacteria, like one called SIBO, which is small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, which is basically where the bacteria that's supposed to be in the large intestine migrates to the small intestine and can cause you issues. You could even have a parasite. You could have another infection going on. So it's so important to catch those things early on, and work with a practitioner, work with a health coach to make the improvements, because you cannot eat enough healthy food to clear that up. You can't clear up a gut infection by eating vegetables. I wish that was the case, and once you do figure out what it is, often, like with SIBO or another infection, often those things are fairly easy to clear up once you're working with someone who knows what they're doing. But if you're just trying to throw things at it without really any knowledge of what's going on, it can be really frustrating and expensive. So I don't want you to waste your money, and that's why I try to structure the way I health coach around starting with those basics, because it doesn't cost you anything to go to sleep a little bit earlier, I guess, or to start incorporating, switching out your food. So anyway, I hope that's helpful. If you have any questions, wanting to dive into more of the specifics, I would love to hear them on the page. I am here for you. I'm here to answer any of those questions. So let me know, and I will talk to you soon. Bye.